Well, good morning, Michael. Say, what time is it for you right now?
Well, my watch is not even on. That's how early it is. It is currently 4:30 in the morning Pacific time, 7:30 your time, right?
That's right. And
But
hmm,
with very, very good reason.
right,
Why don't you tell the folks, fine folks, why we're hanging out this early in the morning?
sure. And home is the Pennsylvania Turnpike for me right now because this has to happen on the one day a week I go into work. But it is February 1st, 2024, and it is the dropping of the first Billy Joel single in how many years? 13, 15,
17, I think, by this
17
point.
years. We all got a teaser about a week ago, and interest has been piqued. There's been a lot of conjecture about it. We got about a 10-second preview of just the piano, and then there was a little bit of another 10-second preview that was do it went up, it came down, and went back up with a little bit of the verse. And we didn't know what we were going to get. We were also all curious about what was going to happen with three other co-writers and a young producer.
Yeah.
And here it is. About 30 minutes ago, it dropped. Turn the Lights Back On is the name of the single. And I don't know. I've listened to it about three, four times now. How about you?
Yeah, about the same. I went into this whole thing cautiously optimistic, as I suppose not to be disappointed.
Hmm.
Um, excited for something new from Billy, and but didn't want to overhype my mind. And needless to say, I'm really enjoying what I'm hearing right now.
It's good. There's a lot of good things to say about it. I just want to say, in terms of my anticipation, I tempered my expectations very much as well. And I managed to do it really well where I sort of like didn't care until 6:45 when I was in the car and I was trying to like get my Amazon Music up because I had pre-ordered it, and then I was like, oh, what song am I going to play right before it? Oh, here it comes, and it was great just to have that like 20 concentrated minutes or 15 of like real excitement.
Yeah,
I think it was worth it. I mean, it's not going to be a knockout of the park, but what is, and it also suffers from we've listened to everything else for 30 years at least now. you know, Nothing can be that lived in after 20 minutes after four or five listens, you know.
yeah.
And to that point, I would say for myself anyway, everything I say here is subject to change. These are all very, very much first impressions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very Billy. I
Hmm.
in listening to it, I think I may have mentioned it when you and I talked last week that the last two songs that he wrote that came out, I don't go back and immediately go, oh, that's Billy Joel.
Right.
This top to bottom has Billy's fingerprints all over it. And even with the co-writers, it
Hmm.
still feels very much like Billy Joel. And this to me seems like the more natural next step from River of Dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a ballad, but it's kind of powerful. I guess it's what's a power ballad now, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we don't think of it because it doesn't have a gated snare and shredder guitar solo, but I like it. It's expansive in its sound. It's got that anthemic hook to it. The hook is great,
Yeah.
and it's a good marriage of classic Billy songwriting, classic Billy melody, classic Billy theme, definitely updated. And I think that's where the co-writers came in handy, where I think they must have did the heavy lifting of not letting this sound dated or not letting it sound like an old man writing it. They sort of took that last part of the equation that I'm going to assume Billy was not as familiar with, i.e., how young people are writing songs in 2024, and sort of translating it um, into that idiom.
Yeah.
As we see with with all those demos over the years, songs can sound radically different by the time they're done. He starts off doing an impression of one thing, and he ends up at Billy. And so, I think we're seeing just a part of that progression here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I Jeff Fisher actually just sent us a note too that
Hmm.
there's a little harkening to turn around, a little piano lick that harkens back to Cold Spring Harbor.
Oh wow.
Um, so there's elements of younger Billy, and I love that Billy is in natural voice here. It's not him doing a Steve Winwood or a Ray Charles, which I love, but it feels like pure Billy in the vocal.
Yeah. All right. So let me go through my criticisms here because I have a few.
Sure.
And then we'll make this a good, nice sandwich with the compliment, criticism, compliment. Okay, just a couple things here. Uh, Lyrically, too much of this laying in the darkness business. You said it about 3 or 4 times too many. Sounds like he ran out of ideas there. Um, I think we had a shot at a great new classic Billy bridge, um, and it just didn't quite get there. I think usually when he does a bridge like that, it's a synthesizer or a sax, and it really just pops out. And
Hmm.
here, that melody is really sort of obscured um, by the fact that it's a kind of twinkling, busy piano piece. The instruments are more layered. The violin sort of picks it up, but we don't get that real like hit. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
you're like all of a sudden like, oh man, there's that Bridge of Angry Young Man, or even Roberta that like I'm always going to remember. Uh,
sure.
and lyrically, it starts off really strong, and then just for me, by the second verse, it dies off in a lot of ways. My conjecture, pure conjecture, is that Billy wrote the verse and chorus, and knowing that Billy doesn't like to finish writing that much, was kind of ended there. And you hear the ideas getting streamlined. You hear that, and in the second verse and afterwards, and I think that makes me miss the classic, almost convoluted Billy narratives where there's a lot of detail and there's a lot of idiosyncratic elements there as to how he's describing the situation, and we lose that after the first verse. It just becomes very much what you would expect to hear, sort of a stream of images, things like that. Reminds you a little of maybe Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo, where you have this concept, and by the second or third verse it's just sort of reinforcing that with supporting details. It's not pushing a narrative forward anywhere. It's really just hammering that home with different examples.
Yeah, and that you're right though. That is something he does really well as a lyricist. So I wonder if that's a big part of where the other songwriters came into play here, just with kind of taking, like you said before, taking it across the finish line.
Yeah.
I it but at the same time, it doesn't. It, I would have loved to have seen, where he could have taken it had he given, had he stuck with it on his own. But at the same time, had he, we probably never would have heard this.
Right. And we've seen where what happens when Billy falls apart by the second verse, where I can't think of any offhand, but I know we've covered them where it's like, oh man, you definitely had a great first verse and just kind of wrote this in the bathroom on the way back, on the way back to the
Right.
piano, the last
Yeah.
part. But
Right.
yeah, but I mean, hey man, it's a good shot back out of the gate, that's for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I'll say volley to you before I go over the rest of my list written on the
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
of the.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are absolutely great observations. I'm still kind of waking up, so I haven't. My brain hasn't gone as deep as you yet. But I can absolutely hear where you're coming from. I think for me, it's just more of feeling relieved about the song.
Yeah.
I one thing I loved about it, and again, I'll go back to something that was really fascinating to me was the vocal performance. Saying that he's natural Billy, but it's interesting. It doesn't sound like younger Billy because obviously it's been 30 plus years
Hmm.
since we've heard younger Billy on a recording, really.
Right.
Younger Billy, even I say, River of Dreams.
Relatively younger
Um,
Billy.
right. But at the same time, if you go and listen to a live show, it doesn't sound like that either, how he
Yeah.
sings live now. So I was very curious what like a recorded vocal from Billy was going to sound like these days.
Hmm.
And there was those McCartney covers a while back that were kind of rough, and I remember. So I was a little nervous,
Hmm.
but I think they found a key that was working for him now, where he can still go for it in spots,
Hmm.
but he's not really, belting it out of the park like he did when he was younger. It really suits where he's at right now locally. And he's not worried about singing it live. I'm sure they're going to play it live, but
Right.
they went at this purely from a recording aspect and not being like, okay, I need to figure out how we can record this where I can perform it live.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. You can hear where he can take it live, and it does sound like a very natural voice. There is auto tune on it, as we've discussed a little in the Discord. And I am curious if they did it sort of on purpose because that's just the style now. Um, I hope that they didn't just digitally raise the pitch of his voice to get it where they wanted it. I guess the proof is going to be in the pudding when he starts playing it live, but
Right.
I don't necessarily think that's the case.
I'm leaning towards it being a little more individual note tuning,
Yeah,
here and there, just adjusting a few things. And I know it's the style. I mean, it's been happening for 30 years,
yeah,
pitch correcting on some level. I know it's popular. I know it's the thing, but I feel like with a vocalist like Billy Joel, it's completely unnecessary.
yeah. I was just thinking, it might be a case where we know how much Billy used to love tracking live, and maybe the auto tune in this case is being used in the sense of Billy saying, "Man, that was the take that had the most feel.
Yeah,
Let's just fix the bum notes. You're actually getting the best possible
performance.
studio performance, right? Because you're not going to capture that magic again." I don't know. I feel like I'm being very apologetic about a lot of this, but oh well.
Yeah.
I'm really just
It's
working through what it means for Billy to be recording in the
yeah.
21st century.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think whatever it takes
Yeah.
is where I'm at with it. So
Hmm.
if we need to pitch correct a little bit for him to feel happy with the vocal take, if we need to bring in a couple, as you put it, young bucks. I love that term, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, bring in a couple guys to give it a fresh feel and a fresh set of eyes and ears, then
Right.
I'm super happy with it. We've
Yeah.
gotten literally nothing in a long time,
Right.
and it's got elements of the old, but it still feels fresh and it still feels like Billy Joel. I'm gonna say it again because I don't know where it's gonna sit in the canon of his work
Hmm.
necessarily, but it's refreshing to hear a new song and I can go, yes, that's a Billy Joel song.
Yeah. So I got a couple more bullet points here before I got to run. So
Jack, by the way, for anyone
yeah.
watching this video,
Hmm.
you should have done it in the massage chair behind you.
Michael, I'm sitting in the middle of a rest stop on battery power. I don't need any
Incredible.
more variables going on. This is the limit for me.
Right.
um, but yeah, that was a missed opportunity. All right, so great hook. Hook's going to sit with me for a while. Hook sat with me the first time I heard it, I think. Um, that first verse is great. I love these lines that come out. I'm just going to read it out real quick. Please open the door. Nothing is different. We've been here before. Pacing these halls, trying to talk over the silence. And pride sticks out its tongue, laughs at the portrait that we've become, stuck in a frame, unable to change. I was wrong. I mean, that's a great, breezy, but very well written. And then I love in the chorus, the second he said this line, though I used to be romantic, both the sentiment and the cadence of it is like, oh, I'm like, oh man, that's like 1978, the way he like
Yeah.
soars on the word romantic, like just find that perfect word. That's what makes the second verse. And after that, like, a lot of smaller words, but that was awesome. The mix is great. I love the mix. Not 100% on the drum sound, but more because I'm like, God, how am I going to ever play this live? Because it's got a weird sound to it. But I think it worked, man. I think it doesn't sound like he's, an old guy trying to sound young and hip. I think it just fit into that really, really well. Yeah, like you said, the voice is great. The piano playing is pure Billy. They didn't streamline a lot of those notes. He got his twinkling in there, and that was really good to hear. That was like putting on. That was like wrapping up in your old blanket, just like hearing him play
Right.
like that again on a new song.
Oh yeah.
Um, and, he's been streamlining since what? An Innocent Man, anyway. I mean, he hasn't been doing gnarly jazz chords quite as much for 40 years. So, we weren't going to expect another Zanzibar now anyway.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it's good. I mean, if this is the first shot out of the gate, I'm happy. If it's a proof of concept, I'd invest. I do want to draw one illusion is, when Joe Strummer came back, the Clash broke up for all intents and purposes, early 80s. and then he put out three great albums right before he died in 2001, I think 2001 or 2002. And so the story goes, he was just off. He hadn't been writing anything, and he hooked up with these young dudes that he met at Glastonbury, and they were young Brit poppers. And he said, "All right, I'll make the album with you." And it was that fusion that knocked these three albums out, and it was, we saw that same thing. And, the first album was a little shaky. Second two, I play the hell out of to this day. So, if he wants to keep going in this, I say, yeah, shake off the rust and go for it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a video on Freddie's Facebook or Instagram reels yesterday, and Freddie Wexler, the
Yeah.
producer and one of the songwriters, and it was him and Billy in the car. Freddie's
Right.
driving, I think, and Billy's in the passenger seat, and they're listening to the radio of them talking about the new single.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Freddie's kind of freaking out, and Billy
Mhm.
is all smiles, and they're all like super buddy buddy, having a good time. And for me, to make a good Billy Joel song or a record, you need a good relationship. You need
Yeah.
that camaraderie,
Hmm.
which Billy has historically had through the years with the musicians he's played with. And so just to see the 5 seconds of interplay between the two of them and high-fiving about the news, and I don't know, to me it was like, oh, okay, these guys are, this is just more than some random guy at this point.
Yeah.
They've got a friendship, they've got a bond.
Right.
So to me, that's exciting to see that. And I think this, knock on wood, I'd be excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. And we'll leave it there. This will be up pretty soon. I got to get to work. Shoot, what's a good boss man? Back breaking, bone shaking.
Right?
Nah, I like my job. No, it's a good
Right.
time. It's just a shame I had to go in today. But all right, I guess we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah. See you soon, everyone.